The year was 2347, and humanity had grown far beyond what their ancestors could have imagined. Cities floated in the clouds of Venus. Mining colonies dug deep into the rocks of Mars. Millions of people lived and worked across the solar system, but Earth remained home. Earth was where humanity's heart still beat. What the rest of the galaxy did not know was that humanity had been watching the stars for a very long time. They had listened to signals from distant worlds. They had learned that the universe was not empty, and they had learned something else too. The universe was dangerous. So humanity prepared. For over 100 years, they built weapons in secret. They hid their true power beneath mountains and inside moons. They showed the galaxy nothing but simple ships and peaceful faces, but underneath it all, they were ready for war. Admiral Park stood in the command center deep beneath the city of Seoul. The room was cold and filled with the blue light of holographic screens. Officers sat at their stations, their fingers moving quickly over controls. But there was no panic, not yet. Park was 62 years old. His hair was and his face carried the lines of many hard decisions. He had spent his whole life preparing for this moment. He had hoped it would never come, but it had. On the main screen, he watched 3,000 alien ships emerge from a hole in space near Jupiter. The wormhole glowed bright purple against the blackness. Ship after ship came through. They were huge and dark, covered in strange symbols that glowed red. Each one was larger than any vessel humanity had ever built. The Empire had arrived. Park knew about the. Everyone in the military did. For decades, Earth scientists had intercepted their communications. They had studied the remains of civilizations that had destroyed. They were conquerors. They moved from world to world, taking what they wanted and killing anyone who refused to kneel. They had conquered over 200 star systems. They had enslaved billions of beings. And now they had come to Earth. A young officer looked up from her screen. Her name was Lieutenant, and her hands were shaking slightly. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the alien fleet." Park nodded slowly, put it through. The main screen changed. A face appeared. It was not human. The creature had pale skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. Its mouth was wide and filled with small, sharp teeth. When it spoke, its voice was deep and cold. "I am Grand Marshal of the Empire. I speak to the leaders of this world. Your planet has been chosen for integration into our glorious empire. You will surrender immediately. All resistance will be punished with death. You have 1 cycle to respond. Choose wisely, for this is your only chance." The transmission ended. The screen returned to showing the massive alien fleet. Lieutenant looked at Admiral Park with fear in her eyes. "Admiral, what do we do?" Park did not answer immediately. He walked slowly to the window that looked out over the underground command center. Hundreds of men and women worked below, monitoring every system, tracking every alien ship. They were all waiting for his orders. He thought about his daughter, who lived in a small town near the ocean. He thought about the billions of people on Earth who were going about their normal lives, not yet knowing what had arrived. He thought about all the civilizations that had faced the before. None of them had survived. But humanity was different. Humanity had prepared. He turned back to face his officers. "Contact Doctor. Tell her to come to the command center immediately, and send word to the United Earth Council. We need to meet within the hour." 2 hours later, the council chamber was filled with the most powerful people on Earth. Presidents and prime ministers attended through holographic projections. Military commanders stood along the walls. And at the center of the table sat Councilwoman Bay, the elected leader of United Earth. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a calm voice. She had led humanity through difficult times before, but nothing like this. Doctor stood before the council. She was 50 years old, with long black hair tied back in a simple style. She had spent her entire career working on Project Horizon, the secret weapons program that few people even knew existed. The fleet contains approximately 3,000 warships, she said, pointing to the holographic display. Each ship is heavily armed and carries thousands of soldiers. Based on our intelligence, they expect this to be a simple conquest. They believe we are a primitive species with no real military power. General Song leaned forward. He was a large man with a scar across his face, a reminder of an encounter with scouts many years ago. They attacked one of our outer stations 15 years ago, killed everyone on board, including my wife and son. I have waited a long time for this day. Councilwoman Bay raised her hand for silence. Doctor, what is the status of Project Horizon? Doctor allowed herself a small smile. Project Horizon is fully operational. We have over 10,000 weapons platforms hidden throughout the solar system. We have drone fleets that can be deployed within minutes, and we have the Aegis cannons. The room fell silent. Everyone knew about the Aegis cannons. They were weapons that could create tiny black holes, capable of swallowing entire ships in seconds. They have never faced anything like what we have built, Doctor continued. They believe they are coming to conquer a helpless world. They are wrong. Councilwoman Bay looked around the room. She saw fear in some faces, but also determination. These were the leaders of humanity, and they would not surrender their home without a fight. Admiral Park, she said, what do you recommend? Park stepped forward. His voice was steady and calm. We send them a message, one message. We tell them to stop or they will be destroyed. If they do not listen, we show them exactly what humanity is capable of. And if they do listen, someone asked. Then they leave our system and never return, Park said. But I do not think they will listen. They do not know how to back down. They have conquered too many worlds. They believe they cannot lose. Councilwoman Bay closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her decision was made. Prepare the message. We will give them one warning, only one. If they choose to ignore it, then whatever happens next is their own fault. Admiral Park nodded. He turned to his officers and gave the order that would change everything. Contact the transmission station in the Himalayas. Tell them to prepare for broadcast, and begin moving the civilian population to the underground shelters. If they want a war, we will give them one they will never forget. As the officers rushed to carry out his commands, Park looked one more time at the alien fleet on the screen. 3,000 ships, each one filled with soldiers who had never known defeat. They would learn, humanity would teach them. The message would be sent, and then the galaxy would discover what Earth was truly capable of. The transmission station sat high in the Himalayan mountains, hidden among peaks that touched the clouds. Snow fell gently on the metal structures that rose from the rock. Inside the main building, the air was warm and filled with the hum of powerful machines. Communications officer sat at her station, staring at the screen in front of her. She was 28 years old, and she had trained for this job her entire adult life, but nothing had prepared her for what she was about to do. The message waited on her screen, written in simple words that carried enormous weight. She had read it 100 times already. Each time her heart beat a little faster. Behind her the door opened. Admiral Park walked in, followed by General Song and Doctor. Their faces were serious, but noticed something else in their eyes. It was not fear, it was determination. Is everything ready? Admiral Park asked. Nodded. Yes, Admiral. The transmission array is at full power. We can broadcast across all frequencies. The message will reach every ship in their fleet within seconds. General Song walked to the window and looked out at the mountains. The world seemed so peaceful from up here. But far away, near Jupiter, 3,000 alien warships waited like hungry wolves. Once we send this message, there is no going back, he said quietly. They will see it as a challenge. They will attack. They were always going to attack, Doctor replied. They do not negotiate. They do not make peace. They conquer and destroy. That is all they know. Admiral Park moved to stand beside. He looked at the message on her screen. The words were simple, but they represented the combined will of 8 billion human beings. "We have studied them for a long time," he said. "We know how they think. They respect only strength. If we beg for mercy, they will see us as weak. They will crush us without a second thought. But if we stand firm, if we show them that we are not afraid, then maybe they will pause. Maybe they will think twice." "And if they don't?" asked. The admiral's eyes grew hard. "Then we destroy them." In the council chamber back in Seoul, Councilwoman Bae waited for confirmation that the transmission station was ready. Around her, the other leaders of Earth watched through holographic connections. Some looked scared, others looked angry, but all of them had voted for this. All of them had agreed. One of her advisors leaned close and spoke softly. "Councilwoman, are you sure about this? Perhaps we could try to negotiate first. Perhaps they would accept some kind of payment or tribute." Bae shook her head. "We have records from over 50 civilizations that tried to negotiate with the... Do you know what happened to them? They were enslaved or killed, every single one. They do not want tribute. They want everything. Our planet, our resources, our people. They will take it all and give nothing in return." She stood up and addressed the council. "I know you are all afraid. I'm afraid too. But fear will not save us. The only thing that will save us is strength. We must show that Earth is not like the other worlds they have conquered. We must show them that attacking us will cost them more than they are willing to pay." A voice came through the speakers. It was Admiral Park. "Councilwoman, we are ready to send the message. We await your final authorization." The room fell silent. Every eye turned to Bae. This was her decision to make. The weight of 8 billion lives rested on her shoulders. She took a deep breath. Then she spoke the words that would echo across the stars. "Authorization granted. Send the message." High in the mountains received the command. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the controls. This was it. This was the moment that would change everything. She pressed the button. The transmission array came alive. Energy pulsed through the massive machines, and a signal shot out into space at the speed of light. It passed the moon in just over a second. It reached Mars in a few minutes, and then it arrived at the fleet. Every ship in the Armada received the same message at the same moment. On bridges and in command centers, officers listened with growing disbelief. The message was short and clear. "To the Empire, this is Earth. You have entered restricted space. This is your final warning. Stop your advance or you will be destroyed. There will be no negotiation. There will be no second warning. Leave now and you will be allowed to survive. Stay and you will face consequences beyond anything you have ever known. The choice is yours. Choose wisely." The message ended. Silence filled the space between worlds. On the flagship, Grand Marshal listened to the recording for a second time. His 4 eyes blinked slowly as he processed what he had just heard. Then his wide mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. "Play it again," he ordered. His officers looked at each other nervously. They had conquered many worlds, but they had never received a message quite like this. Most species begged for mercy. Some tried to negotiate. A few remained silent, accepting their fate, but no one had ever threatened the Empire. Sub-Commander Vex stepped forward. He was younger than, with darker skin and eyes that held a hint of doubt. "Grand Marshal, perhaps we should consider their words. They seem very confident. Maybe they have weapons we do not know about." Turned to face his sub-commander. The smile faded from his face, replaced by cold anger. "You think I should be afraid of these creatures? These beings who live on one small world and call themselves powerful. I have conquered races that spanned 100 star systems. I have destroyed fleets 10 times the size of anything these humans could build." He waved a hand at the screen which showed Earth floating in the distance like a blue and white jewel. "Look at them. They have no fleet waiting to meet us. No space stations. No defensive platforms. They hide on their little planet and send threats. They are bluffing. They hope we will be scared and run away. Vex lowered his head in submission, but his doubts remained. Something about this felt wrong. The humans were too calm. Their message was too certain. It was as if they knew something that did not, but was not interested in doubts. He had built his career on bold action and absolute confidence. He had never lost a battle, and he was not about to start now. "We will wait," he announced. "We will let them sit in fear for a few hours. Let them wonder if their little threat worked, and then we will advance. We will crush their pathetic defenses and take their world. And when I stand on the ashes of their cities, I will remind them of this foolish message they sent." The officers nodded in agreement, though some exchanged worried glances when was not looking. 6 hours passed. On Earth, people waited in shelters deep underground. Families held each other close. Children asked their parents what was happening. The adults did not have good answers. In the command center beneath Seoul, Admiral Park watched the alien fleet on his screens. They had not moved. They had not responded to the message. They simply waited like predators studying their prey. "What are they doing?" Lieutenant asked. "They are trying to scare us," Park replied. "They want us to become afraid. They want us to send another message begging for mercy. They are testing our will." "And what do we do?" Park's face was stone. "We wait. We said there would be one warning. We meant it. If they want to ignore our words, that is their choice. But we will not beg. We will not repeat ourselves. The next time we speak, it will be with our weapons." After 6 hours of silence, Grand Marshal rose from his command chair. His decision was made. "All ships advance to attack position. We will reach Earth orbit in 12 hours. Prepare the ground forces for landing. This world belongs to the Empire." The massive fleet began to move. 3,000 warships, carrying millions of soldiers, headed toward the small blue planet that had dared to threaten them. They did not know that they were flying straight into a trap. They did not know that humanity had spent 100 years preparing for this moment. They did not know that the quiet world in front of them was about to show them something they had never seen before. They had made their choice, and now they would face the consequences. Grand Marshal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. It was the largest ship in the fleet, a massive structure of dark metal and glowing red symbols. From here, he had commanded hundreds of invasions. From here, he had watched worlds burn. Now he watched Earth grow larger on the screen in front of him. The planet looked peaceful, covered in blue oceans and white clouds. Green continents spread across its surface. It was a beautiful world, he had to admit. It would make a fine addition to the Empire. "Grand Marshal," an officer called out, "we have crossed the orbit of Mars. Earth's fourth planet is now behind us." Nodded with satisfaction. "And still no resistance. No fleet has come to meet us. No weapons have fired. The humans talk big, but they do nothing." Around him, his officers smiled and laughed. They were starting to relax. This was going to be an easy conquest after all. The human threat had been nothing but empty words. But Sub-Commander Vex did not laugh. He stood near the edge of the bridge, studying his scanner with worried eyes. Something was bothering him, though he could not say exactly what. "Grand Marshal," he said carefully, "I notice something strange. Our sensors are not detecting any military installations on Earth. No bases, no weapons, nothing. Even primitive civilizations usually have something." Waved his hand dismissively. "Obviously, they are hiding their defenses. They think if they stay quiet, we will not know where to attack. It is a foolish strategy. We will find their weapons when we land." Vex wanted to say more, but he saw the look on his face. The Grand Marshal did not like to be questioned. Officers who questioned him too often tended to have short careers. On Earth, deep in the underground command center, Admiral Park watched the fleet move closer. The alien ships appeared on his screen as red dots, slowly crossing the space between Mars and Earth. They passed Mars, Lieutenant reported. At current speed, they will reach Earth orbit in approximately 8 hours. Park nodded slowly. Good. Begin the evacuation of all remaining surface populations. I want everyone underground before they arrive. Across the planet, the final stages of humanity's emergency plan began. Trains carried millions of people into deep tunnels. Elevators descended into vast underground cities that had been built in secret over the past century. Entire populations disappeared beneath mountains and oceans. To anyone watching from space, it would look like Earth was abandoning its surface. It would look like the humans were running away to hide. But they were not running. They were just getting out of the way. Doctor entered the command center with a tablet in her hands. Her face was calm, but her eyes held a fierce light. She had waited her entire life for this moment. "Admiral," she said, "Project Horizon is ready for activation. All 10,000 platforms are standing by. The drone fleets are powered up and waiting for orders. The Aegis cannons are fully charged." Park looked at her, and the wormhole. Doctor smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "We have satellites in position around it. The moment you give the order, we can close the wormhole. There will have no escape route." General Song walked over to join them. The old soldier had been quiet for hours, but now he spoke. "I have waited 15 years for this. 15 years since they killed my family. I never thought I would see justice. I thought I would die with revenge only in my dreams." He looked at the screen, where the red dots continued their slow advance. "But now justice is coming. Not just for my family, but for all the species they destroyed. For all the worlds they burned. Today, they will learn what it means to face an enemy who is ready." In the Lunar Operations Center, tech specialist hand-ran final checks on the weapons systems. He was only 25 years old, a genius who had helped design the Aegis cannons. Most people his age were worried about their careers and relationships. He was worried about saving the entire human race. His fingers moved quickly across his control panel. One by one, hidden weapons came online. Satellites that had been disguised as space debris revealed their true nature. Platforms hidden inside asteroids powered up for the first time. Weapons that had been buried on the moon's dark side rose to the surface. "All systems are green," Han reported through his communication device. "We have full coverage of the combat zone. The moment they enter weapons range, we can engage." Admiral Park's voice came back through the speaker. "Understood. Hold position until my command. We want them deep inside our trap before we spring it." Han took a deep breath. In a few hours, he would either be celebrating the greatest victory in human history, or he would be dead. There was no middle ground. Aboard the Eternal Conquest, Grand Marshal was growing impatient. The hours of travel seemed to stretch forever. He wanted to see Earth burn. He wanted to walk on its surface as a conqueror. To pass the time, he called his officers together for a meeting. They gathered in the war room, a circular chamber with holographic displays showing the human solar system. "Look at this pitiful collection of worlds," said, gesturing at the display. 8 planets, a handful of moons, some rocks floating in space. This is what the humans call their territory. This is what they threaten to defend." His officers laughed. One of them, a commander named, spoke up. "Grand Marshal, what shall we do with the humans after we conquer them? Shall we enslave them or simply eliminate them?" Considered the question. "The humans are small and weak, but they seem to have some intelligence. I think we will keep some as slaves. They can work in our mines and factories. The rest we will kill as an example." More laughter filled the room, but Sub-Commander Vex did not laugh. He was still thinking about the strange message the humans had sent. The words echoed in his mind. "Stop or you will be destroyed. There will be no second warning." Most species that sent such messages were bluffing. They were trying to buy time, hoping they would hesitate. But something about the human message was different. It was not desperate. It was not pleading. It sounded like a simple statement of fact. Vex looked around at his fellow officers, all of them celebrating a victory that had not happened yet. He wondered if any of them felt the same unease he did. Back on Earth, the final civilian transports were descending into the underground shelters. Parents carried sleeping children. Elderly couples held hands as they walked into the tunnels. Everyone was quiet, filled with a mixture of fear and hope. In one shelter near the ocean, a young girl looked up at her mother with worried eyes. "Mom, are the bad aliens going to hurt us?" Her mother knelt down and hugged her tight. "No, sweetheart, our soldiers are going to protect us. They have been getting ready for this for a very long time. Everything is going to be okay." She hoped she was telling the truth. In the command center, Admiral Park received word that the evacuations were complete. 8 billion people were now safely underground, protected by layers of rock and metal that could withstand nuclear weapons. "The fleet is now 5 hours from Earth orbit," Lieutenant reported. Park stood up from his chair. The time for waiting was almost over. The time for action was coming. "All stations, this is Admiral Park. In 5 hours the enemy will arrive. They think they are coming to conquer a helpless world. They think we have no defense. They are wrong." His voice carried through every military facility on Earth and across the solar system. Thousands of soldiers, pilots, and technicians listened to their commander. "We gave them a warning. We told them to stop or they would be destroyed. They laughed at us. They called us weak. They continued to advance. Now they will see what we really are." He paused, looking at the faces of the men and women around him. These were the people who would fight for humanity's survival. These were the people who would show the galaxy that Earth was not to be touched. Today, we write a new chapter in human history. Today, we show the universe that humanity does not bow. Humanity does not surrender. Humanity fights. Tech specialist Han, listening from the moon, felt tears form in his eyes. He was ready. They were all ready. The trap was set. The weapons were charged. All that remained was for them to walk into the fire. And they were coming. Every minute brought them closer to their doom. The fleet entered weapons range at exactly 3 o'clock in the morning, Earth time. 3,000 warships, arranged in perfect formation, moved toward the blue planet with absolute confidence. Grand Marshal stood on his bridge, ready to give the order to begin the invasion. Then everything changed. It started with a flash of light on the dark side of the moon, then another flash from an asteroid belt beyond Mars, then hundreds more flashes, appearing all across the solar system like stars being born. "What is happening?" demanded, spinning around to face his officers. Subcommander Vex was already checking his scanner. His face went pale. "Grand Marshal, I am detecting massive energy signatures. Thousands of them. They are appearing everywhere." On the main screen, the darkness of space was suddenly filled with light. Weapons platforms emerged from hiding places that they had not even suspected existed. Satellites unfolded from what had looked like dead rocks. Structures rose from beneath the surface of moons that they had scanned and declared empty. Admiral Park, watching from Earth, allowed himself a small smile. "Begin Phase 1. Across the solar system, 10,000 EMP cannons fired at once. Waves of electromagnetic energy washed over the outer edges of the fleet. Ships that were hit went dark immediately. Their power systems failed. Their weapons went offline. Their engines stopped. 200 ships drifted helplessly, knocked out in the first 5 seconds of the battle. On the Eternal Conquest, alarms screamed. Officers shouted in confusion. Grand Marshal grabbed the edge of his command chair to steady himself. "Shields, raise all shields," he roared. But the attack was not over. Phase 1 was just the beginning. Pilot O sat in her control station on Mars, watching her screens with sharp eyes. She was 32 years old, the best pilot in the United Earth Fleet. But today she would not be flying a ship. Today she would be controlling something far more dangerous. Ghost Squadron. On her command, 50,000 drones launched from hidden bases across the solar system. They were small and fast, each one carrying weapons that could tear through armor. They moved in perfect coordination, guided by the most advanced artificial intelligence humanity had ever created. Ghost Squadron is away, reported, engaging enemy flanks. The drones hit the fleet like a swarm of angry bees. They were too small for the big guns to hit. They moved too fast for the pilots to track. They sliced through enemy formations, destroying fuel lines and weapon systems with precise strikes. Ships began to explode, first 10, then 50, then 100. Fire and debris filled the space around the fleet. Grand Marshal watched in horror as his ships died around him. This was impossible. This could not be happening. The humans were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be helpless. They were not supposed to have weapons like this. "All ships return fire," he screamed. "Destroy those drones." But the drones were everywhere. For every one that was destroyed, 10 more appeared. They came from angles that should have been impossible. They attacked with coordination that no living pilots could match. Engineer Jin watched the battle from his station deep inside Earth's moon. He was 45 years old, a quiet man who spent most of his life in laboratories and workshops. He had created the Aegis cannons, weapons that most people said could not exist. Today he would prove that they worked. "Phase 3 is ready," he reported. "Aegis cannons are locked on target." Admiral Park's voice came through his communication device. "Fire when ready." Jin took a deep breath. He had dreamed of this moment for 20 years. He had done the math thousands of times. He knew the science was sound. But until now, the Aegis cannons had never been tested in real combat. He pressed the button. Across the solar system, 42 massive cannons fired beams of pure energy toward the fleet. The beams were invisible to the naked eye, but their effects were very visible indeed. Space began to twist around the points where the beams hit. Reality itself seemed to bend and fold. And then, in the center of each twisted point, something dark appeared, something that pulled everything toward it. Micro-black holes. The black holes existed for only a fraction of a second each, but that was enough. Ships that were caught in the effect were crushed and pulled apart. They simply disappeared, swallowed by tiny points of infinite gravity. In the first volley, 200 more ships vanished. On the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, Sub-Commander Vex stared at the screen with wide eyes. He had never seen anything like this. He had never imagined anything like this. "Grand Marshal," he said, his voice shaking, "we have lost 800 ships. Our fleet is being destroyed." Could not speak. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. His mind could not process what was happening. He had conquered 200 star systems. He had destroyed civilizations that had lasted for thousands of years. And now he was being defeated by a single planet. "Retreat," he finally managed to say. "Order all ships to retreat, fall back to the wormhole." The order went out across the fleet. Surviving ships turned and tried to flee, but they soon discovered something terrible. The wormhole, their only escape route, was no longer there. Doctor had done her job perfectly. At the moment the battle began, Earth's satellites had fired special weapons at the wormhole, collapsing it with artificial gravitational waves. This door home was closed forever. "Grand Marshal," an officer shouted, "the wormhole is gone, we cannot escape." Felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Fear. True, deep fear. He was trapped in this system with these humans who had lied about their strength. These humans who had played weak while building weapons of unimaginable power. "Then we fight," he growled, trying to find his courage again. "We have over 2,000 ships remaining. We will destroy their weapons platforms. We will break through their defenses. We." Another volley of Aegis cannon fire tore through his fleet. 300 more ships disappeared into micro-black holes. Ghost Squadron drones continued their relentless assault. Imp waves knocked out more ships every minute. Subcommander Vex made a decision. He pushed past the shocked officers and activated the communication system. Human commanders, this is Subcommander Vex of the Empire. We surrender. We ask for mercy. Please stop your attack. Spun around, rage filling his face. How dare you? I did not authorize that message. You are going to get us all killed, Vex shouted back. Can you not see? We have already lost. We must surrender or we will all die. Admiral Park heard the surrender request in his command center. He listened to the voice, filled with fear and desperation. It was the same fear that countless species had felt when facing the Empire. The same desperation that billions of beings had experienced before being enslaved or killed. He thought about the warning humanity had sent. One chance, only one. This is Admiral Park of United Earth, he transmitted. We gave you a warning. We told you to stop. You laughed at us. You called us primitive. You continued to advance. He paused, his voice growing cold. There will be no surrender accepted. You made your choice when you ignored our message. Now you will face the consequences. The attack continued. More Aegis cannons fired, more drones swarmed, more ships died. Grand Marshal watched as his empire's finest fleet was torn apart. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were being destroyed like toys. Soldiers who had never known defeat were dying by the thousands. In the end, only one ship remained. By Admiral Park's order, the Eternal Conquest was left intact, its weapons disabled, its engines barely functional. Stood alone on his bridge. His officers were dead or captured. His fleet was gone. His dreams of conquest were ashes. Admiral Park's voice filled the silent bridge one final time. We are letting you live, Grand Marshal. We are letting you take your ship back to your empire. You will tell them what happened here. You will show them the recordings of this battle, and you will deliver a message. Said nothing. He had no words left. The message is simple, Park continued. Earth is not to be touched. Any ship that enters our space with hostile intentions will be destroyed. We do not seek war. We do not seek empire, but we will defend ourselves, and we will win. The communication ended. A small path opened in space, a new temporary wormhole created by human technology, leading back toward territory. The Eternal Conquest limped toward it, carrying the broken Grand Marshal and a message that would change the galaxy forever. 6 months passed since the Battle of Earth, as it came to be known. In those 6 months, everything changed. The Eternal Conquest returned to space with its broken Grand Marshal and its terrible recordings. The Emperor, a being who had ruled over 200 star systems for centuries, watched in silence as 3,000 of his finest warships were destroyed by a species he had never heard of. He watched the human weapons platforms appear from nothing. He watched the drone swarms tear through formations. He watched the Aegis cannons create black holes that swallowed ships whole. And he watched his most trusted commander stand helpless as everything he had built was taken apart. When the recording ended, the Emperor spoke one word. How? No one had an answer. The humans had hidden their true power for generations. They had watched the galaxy, learned about its dangers, and prepared in secret. They had turned their entire solar system into a fortress, and they had waited for someone to be foolish enough to attack them. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. It traveled through trade routes and communication networks. It reached every civilization, every empire, every world that had ever heard of the mighty had been defeated, 3,000 ships gone, millions of soldiers dead, and all because of a single planet that had sent a simple message. Stop or you will be destroyed. The reaction was immediate. Species that had lived in fear of the for centuries suddenly found their courage. Rebellions broke out on slave worlds. Conquered peoples rose up against their masters. The empire that had seemed unbeatable was suddenly facing enemies on every side. On Earth, life slowly returned to normal. People emerged from the underground shelters to find their cities untouched, their homes still standing. The battle had happened far from the surface, in the cold darkness of space. Most humans had not even seen the fighting. They had only felt the ground shake slightly as the Aegis cannons fired. Admiral Park became a hero. His face appeared on screens across the world. People named their children after him, but he did not enjoy the attention. He spent most of his time in his office, already planning for the future. Because Park knew that the battle was won but the war was not over. They would not forget what had happened. Other empires might see Earth as a threat. The galaxy was watching, and they would be testing humanity soon. Doctor returned to her laboratory with a smile on her face. Project Horizon had worked perfectly, but she was not satisfied. She was already designing new weapons, new defenses, new technologies that would keep Earth safe for generations to come. When asked by reporters how she felt about the victory, she gave a simple answer. "I am proud of what we built, but this was just the beginning. The universe is vast and full of dangers. We must always be ready." Tech specialist Han was promoted to lead a new research division. His work on the Aegis cannons had saved billions of lives. Now he was tasked with making them even more powerful, even more precise. He accepted the responsibility with quiet determination. Pilot O retired from active duty and began training the next generation of drone pilots. Ghost Squadron had proven its worth in battle, and Earth would need more pilots like her. She found that she enjoyed teaching, watching young people learn the skills that might one day save their world. General Song visited the memorial that had been built for his wife and son. For 15 years, he had lived with the pain of their deaths. For 15 years, he had dreamed of justice. Now, standing before their names carved in stone, he finally felt peace. "They are avenged," he whispered. "The ones who killed you are gone, you can rest now, and so can I." 6 months after the battle, Earth sent its first official ambassador to the Galactic Council. His name was a diplomat who had spent his career preparing for first contact with alien civilizations. He traveled in a small ship, accompanied by only a handful of staff. But everyone knew that behind him stood the full power of humanity's hidden arsenal. The Galactic Council was a gathering of representatives from hundreds of species. They met on a massive space station at the center of a neutral star system. For centuries, they had dominated these meetings through fear and threats. But today was different. When Ambassador walked into the council chamber, every eye turned to him. The representative from Earth, the human who came from the world that had done the impossible. He was not what they expected. He was a small man with a gentle face and kind eyes. He bowed politely to the assembled delegates and took his seat at the empty desk that had been prepared for humanity. Elder, the leader of a peaceful species called was the first to approach him. They had lived in fear of for generations. They had paid tribute and endured humiliation to survive. Now they looked at the human ambassador with something like hope. "Ambassador," Elder said, his voice filled with emotion, "my people wish to thank you. Because of your world's actions, our children no longer live in fear. They no longer demand tribute from us. We are free for the first time in centuries." Smiled warmly. "Elder, Earth does not seek praise or thanks. We did what we had to do to protect ourselves, but we are glad that others have benefited as well." Other delegates approached, each with similar words of gratitude or curiosity. Species that had never communicated with humans now wanted to establish trade and diplomatic relations. Former enemies of the saw Earth as a potential ally. The entire balance of power in the galaxy was shifting. Finally, the council called for Ambassador to address the assembly. He stood at the central podium, looking out at hundreds of alien faces. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for. This was their chance to define themselves to the galaxy. He spoke calmly, his words translated into hundreds of languages. Members of the Galactic Council, I stand before you as the representative of Earth and humanity. 6 months ago, the Empire sent 3,000 warships to conquer our world. They expected an easy victory. They found something very different. He paused, letting his words sink in. We did not seek war with we sent them a warning. We asked them to leave. They refused. They laughed at us. They continued to advance, so we defended ourselves. His voice grew stronger. Some of you may wonder about our intentions. Some of you may fear that Earth will become like building an empire through force and fear. I want to be clear about who we are. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of species. Humanity does not seek to conquer. We do not want your worlds, your resources, your people. We want to live in peace. We want to trade, to share knowledge, to learn from other civilizations. We want to be part of the galactic community as friends and partners. Then his expression hardened. But understand this. We will not bow, we will not kneel, we will not surrender to any power that threatens our home. Any species that attacks Earth will face the same fate as the fleet. This is not a threat. It is a simple fact. He took a breath. We gave the one warning, only one. That is how humanity operates. We are patient, we are peaceful, but when we are attacked, we respond with everything we have. Remember this. The chamber was silent. No one moved, no one spoke. Ambassador bowed once more. Thank you for welcoming Earth to this council. We look forward to a future of cooperation and mutual respect. May we all find peace among the stars. He returned to his seat. The chamber remained silent for several long moments. Then Elder began to applaud. Others joined him. Soon the entire council was applauding, a sound that echoed through the massive chamber. On Earth, people watched the broadcast of the speech. In homes and offices, in shelters and cities, 8 billion humans saw their representatives stand before the galaxy and declare who they were. Many cried, many cheered, all of them felt proud. In her laboratory, Doctor watched the speech with a smile. Then she turned back to her work. The next generation of weapons was already taking shape on her screens. Earth would be ready for whatever came next. In the memorial garden, General Song placed flowers before the names of his wife and son. He listened to the speech through a small device in his ear. When it ended, he nodded quietly. The future was secure. His family's sacrifice had not been in vain. On the moon, tech specialist Han watched the speech with his team. When Ambassador finished, Han raised his coffee cup in a small toast. To humanity, he said, may we always be ready. And in his office beneath Seoul, Admiral Park turned off the screen and looked out the window at the stars. The battle was won. The message had been sent. The galaxy would never forget what Earth was capable of. But he knew this was just the beginning. There would be other challenges, other threats, other enemies who thought they could take what humanity had built. When they came, Earth would be waiting. The message had been delivered, and it would echo across the stars forever. Stop or you will be destroyed. Humanity had meant every word.